We will repeat that.
Thank you. While we were waiting for people to walk in, I thought it'd be a good time to. My name is Patrick McGuire, Washington County. A point of personal privilege and then parliamentary inquiry. So personal privilege is just that there are some people around me who are not parliamentary experts, so they have a little bit of trouble following what's happening. So I wanted to ask that when folks make points of order, if they could clearly and slowly state them, and then if you could, when you're ruling on the points of order, you could clearly say how you're ruling, and so that everyone can follow what's happening. And then as a parliamentary inquiry, just going forward, there have been a couple of cases where someone's tried to make a subsidiary motion to call the previous question to end debate from this microphone. And it's the point of order has been taken that that's not appropriate, and it hasn't been entirely clear to some of the folks in the audience which way you ruled on that. So if you could just tell us definitely what your ruling is on whether that subsidiary motion is in order from this microphone. Okay, thank you.
My apologies about the confusion about where motions could be made. Our parliamentarian was not aware of the fact that she's hasn't been to, I'm not sure which meetings, but hasn't been to our recent meetings, that our tradition has been to use the middle microphone to make motions, to call the question, etc. So my apologies for that, and I ask for your patience in advance on helping me try to move this forward.
What's the rule?
So we, after we, well, we've given a couple of minutes for folks to come back in. So to repeat yes.
I just wanted to be clear that what your ruling was on whether it was acceptable from here or not, because what you just told us was that it had been our practice.
Yeah, and to your point, yes, it is okay to make motions to call the question, etc., from the middle microphone. And so to repeat the motion again. So the motion on the floor is to, so let's begin from the beginning. The first motion was to censure the chair for bullying and public intimidation. May I ask that we do not, I'm going to repeat that again, if I could ask everyone to pause sidebar conversation. So the first motion was to censure the chair for bullying and public intimidation for a member of the body through electronic communication. There is an amendment now to that motion to accept the chair's acceptance of censure. Just those words, just that principle. And now we are at the point where we're going to vote to accept that particular motion. Or, sorry, that amendment to the original motion. So, you need to use the microphone if you have a question. Yes.
Just a point of information. The amended motion did not replace language. So it was my understanding that it would be in addition to that. So at the end of the motion of censure, we also were amending it to accept the chair's acceptance of censure.
No.
There was no language about replacing language, so
I know, but that was my understanding what the intent of the motion maker was.
okay, that changes quite a bit. I just wanted to be
And that's why, to your point, I've asked that. I've made it very clear this is what the original motion was, and this is what the this motion to amend that would change it to, which is.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for this, but when we voted on calling the question, the fact that we were calling the question on a substitute amendment was not clear at all. That's not what I was voting for. I was voting for the original motion. I was not clear that we were voting on an amendment.
Okay, so to be clear, this next thing that we're going to vote on is to amend the original motion, and I'm going to ask after I make the statement we're going to vote on. So,
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Sorry, I'm in the middle.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
I do not recognize your point.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
You're not recognized.
I have to ask the Assembly to approve this point of order because the Chair won't recognize this point of order. All those in favor of it, I don't even know what my point of order is. No, this is the procedure when the Chair does not recognize the member who's entitled to speak. No! It's not. No!
Sit down.
All those in favor of the point of order to overrule the chair that you can change the amendment after the question has already been called, please say aye.
Aye.
All those who are opposed, please say nay. Nay! I think the nays have it.
Okay, so In order to amend the motion to be simply the censure, to accept the censure, please say aye.
Aye.
Those in opposed to that, please say nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. And we have someone at the procedural microphone.
Point of order. Rebecca Pearson, Jackson County. Is it common practice, Mr. Chair, to substitute an amendment?
The intention of that thing that we voted on, which was voted down,
Mr. Chair, can we ask the person who made the motion what their intention was instead of inferring it?
that was my intention with consultation. If I got that wrong, I apologize.
After we voted on it? It was your intention to check, but that was the intention after we voted on it.
No, she had come up to the podium and we had discussed it. Yeah, and by the way, that motion has already failed. So the motion that we are back to now is the original motion to censure the chair for bullying and public intimidation of a member of the body through electronic communication. So, is there further debate?
I'd like to call a division on the previous vote.
The nays have the previous vote. And-
No, that's why we're calling division.
Call the division to request a standing vote.
Okay, my apologies. We have to do standing division on that last item. My apologies for that. So, okay, so we're calling for division, and this was to accept an amendment that would change the original motion to simply to accept the chair's acceptance of censure. So if you are in favor of the motion to amend the original motion to an acceptance of the chair's acceptance of censure, yes, correct. It does replace the original motion.
I just have a question for the parliamentarian. I'm wondering if it's actually acceptable to call for a division after the vote has been called and we've moved on to the next thing. If it is, I'd like us to call for a division. I just want to be clear on what is acceptable according to you.
Yeah, that was my error, actually.
But is that the opinion of the parliamentarian?
I should have accepted the call for division, and actually,
The member's question is.
We want to be above board.
Question is correct, that when you go to the next item of business, it's too late to call for a division, but the parliamentarian chose not to tell the chair not to accept the motion of division because it was my impression that that's what all of you wanted, that you want a rising vote to be a definitive vote. I could have called that wrong.
Okay, so just to be clear, a division is out of order because we moved on to another point.
however, for the good of the order, so that we record exactly how people want to vote on that motion, I will accept the division, and I apologize for the delay for that. Okay, so please, if you are in favor of a motion to simply censure, to accept the chair's civic censure,
Amendment.
so again, we are voting on an amendment to Albert Lee from Multnomah County's original motion for censure to simply accepting the chair's acceptance of censure. So if you are standing in favor of this, you're accepting that amendment. So it's to simply amend it to the chair's acceptance of censure, and is to if you're standing for this, is to approve that amendment. This strikes the motion made by Albert Lee from Multnomah County, to be very clear. This is to amend that motion to replace it with the chair's acceptance of censure.
No, that's not
This,
right.
what, hold on. Yep. So if you're standing in favor of this, you're accepting to amend the original language with simply to accept the chair's acceptance of censure. If you are in favor of that, please stand. And please stay standing. Okay? Yes, and Brad will do a count. And please no sidebar comments.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that people, some folks, this will be new. We're going to do a standing vote, and when I point to you, I'm going to ask you to say the next number that.
$66 aye, 54 nay. The ayes have it.
Okay, so that's ready. Now you have to vote on the motion. Vote on the motion.
So now we'll vote on the motions adopted.
No, the amendment. Amendment.
So the motion now is to accept the chair's acceptance of censure. Okay? Yes, and from, sorry, procedural mic question? No.
That's not right. That's not right.
So the motion we're voting on now is to accept the chair's acceptance of censure.
That was the amendment, not the main motion.
It's the main motion now.
Can I make a motion?
That last vote was to amend it to the motion now to accept the chair's acceptance of censure.
One point of information,
Yes.
could you clarify that now that we passed the amendment, we're now voting on the original motion to censor?
No. Well, we're now on the, so we've modified the original motion to censure with now, we are now voting to accept the chair's acceptance of censure.
Yeah.
That's it, just those words.
That's not the motion that was made.
Correct.
Yeah, we amended.
And we voted to amend it and that passed to those words. So we're not, it's been amended.
Yes, it's been amended, but now the appropriate motion is on the original motion.
No, sorry. That was amended. That's what we were voting on. I apologize. I tried to explain that several times explicitly.
It wasn't clear at all because we all voted for it, understanding that there was going to be a vote on the original motion.
Thank you.
The amendment carried. So the original motion has been modified. I apologize. I tried to explain that very, very clearly.
It's been modified, but we haven't voted on the original motion. Now, an amendment is an amendment to the motion. It doesn't replace the original motion.
It is now amended to accepting the chair's exceptions, and I want to get this absolutely correct.
That was at the end, that was changed wording at the end of the motion. That's what we all understood because that's the way you reported it. That was minor word changing to the original motion. That's what we voted for.
Respectfully, I tried to be very clear about what we're voting on. Sorry. I should note that I did not vote either way on that. So I'm just trying to support the will of the body. Yes, please.
Point of parliamentary inquiry. Rebecca Pearson, Jackson County. I'm just curious if it's common practice or accepted within Robert's rules to allow the chair to rule for division after. I'm just curious. It sounds like there's a lot of problems with this.
With per parliamentarian, that is correct. And when I remembered, it's been a while since I've looked at Robert's rules. That is a correct way to do it, to make sure that the vote is very transparent.
Even though my understanding was that the parliamentarian ruled that we already moved on.
Well, it was, I was going a little bit quickly, and I should have allowed for division. That vote was important, and I wanted it to be recorded.
I just want to be clear that it sounds like there's a lot of problems with it.
Indeed, I could have done that better, and I apologize for that.
may I be recognized, Chair? Yes, sir. Quick question.
So
Point of information?
we are now opening debate on the motion to accept the chair's acceptance of censure. Those words. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
I would like to make a motion to amend the current amended motion to include the acceptance of censure regarding bullying and online. That is the motion that I would like to amend. I would like to add that amendment to our current motion, the same way that the previous motion was amended, to put it back in a different way that is maybe more effective and more appropriate.
Unfortunately, sorry, consult with our parliamentarian. What you're essentially doing is you're putting in words back in that we've already struck out. So we can't rehash a decision that we've already made. To the con-mic name and county.
Sean McNulty, Deschutes County. I think the censure process has been overblown and is more than enough for what she has accepted responsibility for not using people's names directly in email before, and I move to call the previous question. The chair has already accepted that we shouldn't be using people's names in emails and future correspondence. This is taking time away from other business. I move to call the previous question.
Second.
Okay, the question's been called and the second's been made. So all those in favor of the now amended motion, which is to...
I'm calling the question.
Oh, wait, sorry. So please vote aye to call the question, to end debate. Aye. And nays? Nays. The ayes have it. So now we are voting to accept the chair's acceptance of censure. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. I can't tell. Could we have a roll call, please?
Roll call. No, not a roll call. Not a roll call.
Counting vote.
Standing.
Yep.
Standing, not
So,
standing or roll call.
sorry, standing.
Okay.
78 aye, 44 nay. The ayes have it. Thank you for your patience.